The term toy grail or holy grail toy gets thrown around easily amongst collectors, and whether you've been collecting for decades or you're just starting out, it's almost always a different toy or a different reasoning behind it. We determine toy grails thanks to their rarity or uncommonness, the high price they demand on the secondary market, and the value attached to it due to their story or lore. But it can also just be a nostalgic reason that makes an easy obtainable toy a grail for someone. One thing's for sure, when we say toy grail, we mean business, and this is first on our want list. I released a video on my top 10 most wanted toys a couple years ago, and since then I've been able to acquire a couple of them. So I figured it was time for an updated list. So here's my top 10 new most wanted toy grails, and maybe they're yours too. Starting off with a helicopter view on things is the Apocalypse Copter, a brightly colored toxic helicopter perfectly lining up with the aesthetic of the early Playmates offerings like Turtles. However, Toxic Crusaders is a single wave line. This was the most expensive item in it to come out, so perhaps a lower production size was applied for this price point, and therefore it probably only enjoyed 1 year of production, which basically means there's less of them out there. However, you could see this helicopter in the cartoon and in the video game, so it's pretty recognizable if you're into the story of Toxic Crusaders. Now, with the increase of TMNT collectors and 90s line toy enthusiasts, there's a lot more eyes on this line, and it can affect the price. We've seen it rise after COVID, and this piece just takes the cake. But the main reason I really want this is because I'm somewhat of a completionist when it comes to this line. I'm pretty much just short one Apocalypse Copter to have all of the vehicles sealed in box and to kind of complete the line, honestly. Now, there's also a little bit of nostalgia affecting this pick for the top 10 spot, which is that a buddy of mine actually used to own it and we used to play with it a ton when we were kids. So, am I gonna dish out the $900 that a sealed copy of this thing is going for? Maybe, maybe not. And then for the 9th spot, we're heading back to 1988 for some plushie toys. There's just something about gross out plush toys that catches my attention and pops a smile on my face. The best known is probably the My Pet Monster, which enjoyed some re-releases but also had a couple of variations in their initial run. But there's always one toy that seems to be left out. Now, there's not a lot of info on this one, only that it was just another release by Amtoy connected to the My Pet Monster line. This is Giggly Eyes Monster, part plush and part plastic to give the face more details. What's really different about this one is that his hands are also sculpted in plastic, and this is in favor to it being able to grab onto things and swing around. The bottom of the feet have monster feet printed on, and the left one says shake me. And if you want to get all of these, there's going to be a pink and a yellow version for the Giggly Eyed Monster. But then again, you don't have to be looking around for the chains because this one didn't come with any chains. Now, this toy is obscure and the availability is almost non-existent to the point where you might think, was this ever released? Creating a nice lure for the toy in question as you dig around every plush bin at Goodwill, hoping to come across it one day. I was not able to find a price for this one, but I'd be happy to dish out a serious amount to get my hands on it. Then for the number 8 spot, I'm actually going all the way back to the 60s, because when you start collecting stuff like this and you start getting interested in the way these toys were made, you end up digging around and trying to search, like, where did this all come from? Where were the origins for some of these toy lines? Where were the origins for some of these toy companies? And one toy that really stood out from that 60s Monster Kid generation has got to be the Great Garloo by Marx Corporation, because it is just a fantastic looking toy. It's a great monster. The way the mechanics would work is just like what you knew they had back in the day in the 60s. There was a commercial for this thing, but nothing else. It didn't have like a story around it or anything, but it just looks so cool, and it looks cool in every single collection you see it in. Now, unfortunately, this one is getting really tough to find right now, just because, I mean, it's been so long since it's released. How many really good copies are left of it? This is something I would definitely love to give a cool spot in my collection. Now, there's a couple other monsters that I want to pop in here, so I'm just gonna throw it out there, but one of the greatest monsters of all time has got to be Rodan out of the Shogun Warriors line, which came out in the 70s. However, Rodan was released later. He was released in 1980, and he is one of the most epic pterodactyl toys out there. You already had the Gojira or the Godzilla that came out in the Shogun Warriors line, which I'm still looking for. He was in the last episode I did on this topic. But yeah, Rodan together with the Great Garlu are going to be the two monsters I want to pop on from maybe a toy line period where I'm not that heavily into. I'm more into the 80s and the 90s, as you can tell from the remainder of this list. But yeah, I wouldn't mind having a Rodan because it works with any toy line. It's a cool looking pterodactyl type of monster. However, it is really prone to breaking, and yeah, you're gonna have to dish out a lot of money to get one of these in your collection. Now for the number 7 spot, we head back to another Mattel license, and this time it's not Masters of the Universe. However, they did try reintroducing Masters of the Universe in the 90s, but it didn't work out too well. If we're trying to remember Mattel during the 90s and the big toy line for boys that they had, it's got to be Street Sharks. And in the Street Sharks toy line, there's one big fish in the pond. The big white whale for most collectors is the mail-away Ripster. Like the name indicates, this toy was available only as a mail-away. They tried to test the waters for collectors that were ready to spend a little more money on toys with this giant version of one of the main characters, Ripster. This wasn't just a 2-up, but a newly sculpted one that would also accommodate a voice box. Through a couple of buttons on the back, he would yell out catchphrases. And for a while, it wasn't actually hard to find this fantastic toy. Let's just call it like it is. This was not a success when it came out. And it didn't see any other characters getting a giant release. So what ended up happening with the dead stock is that collectible stores were offering them as mail-aways as well. This would last for a while. You could actually see Giant Ripster being offered in toy magazines, but after a while the supply dried up, so collectors who got in early and picked it up still in the mailer shipper have a pretty valuable piece of Street Sharks history in their collections right now. And if you're looking for a loose one right now, then you might want to take a big bite out of your budget and set it aside for this jawsome toy, which you're going to be spending $600 for. Then again, if there's something you should have bought when it came out and held on to, it's got to be Muscle Mutts. Released in 1996 and on the number 6 spot, this toy line released by Streetwise Designs has got Toy Grails written all over it. It's a short-lived toy line by the same folks that dreamt up Street Sharks. Streetwise tried their best to launch this line on their own, but it didn't reach the same size audience, leaving this one to be one of the more obscure anthropomorphic animal lines of the 90s. The impact that TMNT had on the toy industry is that any animal got their own team of heroes, from SWAT cats to cowboys of New Mesa, and Muscle Mutts combined the bigger, badder aesthetic of Street Sharks with dogs, and also cats. The teeth look the same on the sculpt even. Now this is one of those lines I learned about early when I started collecting Street Sharks and Extreme Dinosaurs, being a part of just that little universe, that Streetwise Designs universe, honestly. But I never ever got to see any of them until my last trip over to the US, where I finally saw a couple and they were going for crazy amounts. I mean, I wanted to grab one, but I wasn't ready to dish out, you know, a kidney for one. The loose toys for this one go about $500 each without the weapons. I think the dogs are most sought after, but this line also had cats and a dog catcher, I believe. This is one of those cases where the whole line is the grail. Obviously, the appeal in this is trying to complete your 90s toy lines or just your Street Sharks Extreme Dinosaurs collection with this final offering. As a collector, you see new stuff all the time, and often you'll start picking up stuff because it's cool. One of the lines I've grown to love over the last couple years is LJN's Dungeons and Dragons. There's just something about the playability, the way not any of the characters look the same. They're not the same height. They come with different sorts of weapons. They have a freaking cool playset, some freaking cool monsters in there. I was just drawn to it, even though I never had this as a kid, but as a collector I could definitely appreciate all of the work and the detail that went into this line. It's basically just like Thundercats. The sizes of the figures are all over the place, and some of the monsters are a bit more sought after. Where Thundercats had the Tungosaurus or Astral Moat monster, Dungeons and Dragons had a more prominent character in a big size you could get for your toy collection. This is 1984's Tiamat, the 5-headed dragon. It's a grail piece piece for any collector of the series. And I'm hoping to find this toy still intact with all of its head and limbs, which is a difficult task, but even better is when you find it with the box where the art just elevates the whole toy. Over here, it's for sure the rarity of finding this toy somewhat in complete condition that's making me pop it on the list. Now, for a new in-box specimen of this dragon, you'll be paying upwards of $3,000, unless you're able to haggle well, or you get lucky finding it for way cheaper. And even though a lot of collectors might be more into the playset, the Fortress of Fangs, and to be honest, I wanted to pop it on, but I recently acquired one. And as long as we're talking about playsets, I freaking love playsets, and I couldn't bear to not have a single one on here. I mean, there's so many to choose from. There's a lot of them that are pretty much the grail within the toy line, honestly. What comes to mind is maybe you have the Hive from the Sectaurs toy line, although it doesn't look that pretty. And there's also the Eco Castle, which is, you know, the knockoff Gray Skull from one of the manufacturers of the bootleg knockoff 5.5 toys back in Germany. But if we're looking at a rare playset that is epic and beautiful to look at, lots of playability, there's only one spot we can look. And it has got to be the Ghost Command released by Tyco in the 80s. But it was overshadowed or ghosted by the popularity of the real Ghostbusters. Now this line definitely did not get the love it deserved. Obviously, Filmation Ghostbusters has always taken a back seat on the popularity of the real Ghostbusters. However, this toy is just the perfect monster house, the perfect ghost house, and it just comes with a ton of tiny pieces. I love the colors on it. I actually love that it opens up kind of like Castle Grayskull, and on the inside there you have a ton of playability for your characters as well. And let's just face it, it would look great to display the toys on as well. There's so much stuff packed away in here. It works perfectly with all the other vehicles that came out, so you have a way to really display all of this stuff in a perfect fashion. This is the dream for any collector. If you're into this toy line, you might just really want to start saving up for this thing, because for a complete one without the box, you're going to be spending upwards of $3,000. Now, all of these prices I checked out this month, somewhere in December of 2023. This stuff could already be going up or down again in January if you're watching this, so always head out to eBay, check out the condition of the toy you're trying to look at, and then check out the sold listings. If it's got a couple bids on there, it's a good indicator of what this thing might go for on the collector market. And I think now it's time for an honorable mention. One of the honorable mentions I wanted to do was the TMNT Ooze, or the Foot Soldier Ooze that came out in the TMNT toy line. These reached the toy store shelves in the late 80s, and they were perfect for TMNT. It worked with the vehicles and had playability worked in with certain action figures. Who wouldn't want an ooze canister? Motu had slime, Ghostbusters had ectoplasm, and where these also fetch a fair buck, these TMNT Ooze and Foot Soldier Ooze canisters are some of the most expensive slimes out there. There was nothing better than popping a pot of turtle slime in the back of your Muckman and watching it ooze out. Now, I would be happy just getting the container of where the slime used to be in, and I'm also on the lookout for the little minifigures that were inside. You actually had glow-in-the-dark turtles and turtle figures that you could collect whenever you got a pot of slime of this thing. So, I got a lot of stuff to look out for in this line. But if you want to go big in the slime business, then you have to stow away around $400 for a sealed copy of this slime. And this brings me to the top 3 in this top 10 video, which also makes me think, what's your top 3 Holy Grail toys out there right now? So be sure to leave them in the comments down below. And why do you really want them? Why do you want those toys? See you in the comments. Then in the number 3 spot, we have to head back to Turtles, just because it's one of my favorite toy lines, a decade spanning toy line, honestly, and that's why there's so many grails in here. There's so much hidden stuff tucked away in here. I could probably do a top 10 TMNT toy grails, and I probably should just do it somewhere in the next couple months. But yeah, What am I popping on the top 10 list turtle-wise for me is a toy that I hardly see getting picked up. Because I see a lot of toy grails being picked up from time to time. You got your scratches, you have your Tyranno Shredders being popped up, but this is a toy I never see anybody picking up, even though it's super rare and I never see it. The giant troll editions of the turtles. And the funny thing about this too is that whenever you find a big lot of TMNT stuff, this is never in it either. So it seems almost like any TMNT kid never actually got around to picking it up. Perhaps it just didn't connect with the TMNT kids, so it ended up in oddity bins, where kids who might not be into it would end up getting it. Now, Trolls somewhat got a revived popularity in the 90s, but would it really translate well to Turtles, and would troll collectors start buying these turtles just because of that? Maybe they did. But I think a lot of kids that maybe weren't into TMNT ended up getting this cute turtle version toy. Now, another spot we can find them is longtime collectors. The boxed ones, when they were on discount, they would go into the collections of these early completionists. And that's pretty much where they're gonna stay until they start selling off their collection with these minty boxed examples. But if you're lucky to find a loose one where the hair is still in okay condition, you're probably gonna be dropping $500 to $600 for this troll. Now, for the number 2 spot, we have to head back to one of the best toy lines that has ever graced the planet. And that's, of course, Masters of the Universe. What makes Masters of the Universe so fun to collect is that they always try to add something new to their figures. Even if the 5.5 body stayed the same, each year brought a new gimmick for these Eternian monsters. With Grails aplenty and just variations of our He-Man characters as he pops the Wonder in Wonder Bread or the Top Toys Ular variant. The tail end of the line would have a couple surprises reaching Grail status as well. But back in the day, you would have to go to Europe to see them at retail. There's obviously the laser lights, and then there's the giants that every completionist collector has on their lists after they've collected the USA run. So we're gonna have to talk about the 1987 released Masters of the Universe Giants. Right now, it seems like the giants are the most Grail pieces I'm on the lookout for. Our hero called Titus looks a bit like a big He-Man, and then you have the evil warrior Megator on the opposite side, a green goblin-like creature. Both came with a weapon and doll hair. For the packaging, they went with a window box and gorgeous artwork. Some of them were produced in Mexico, but it seems like they only saw a release in Italy, making them a country exclusive. The big Motu collector community has caused them to migrate into collections across the globe though, and for a sweat-inducing price tag of around $2,000 for a loose one, this could be in your collection too. Now, for the number 1 spot, we have to go back to bootlegs and knockoffs. Once you're done collecting all these lines, what is there left to collect? You want to get that stuff that, you know, got banned, that got into trouble, that represents those toys that you had, but slightly different or slightly worse quality. And then you turn into bootleg collecting of your favorite line. I have an unnatural appreciation for bootlegs and knockoffs. Something about them is just so interesting, and the worse they get, the better they are. Now, some of them are even harder to find than the actual toy lines we have. So if you actually had a quality-wise knockoff line that had a cool figure in there, that is probably going to be even harder to come by, just because the production runs were maybe lower, and often the quality wasn't just up to par with, you know, the bigger companies that were putting it out. So very tough to find this stuff in good quality. Now, some toy manufacturers would actually take pride in creating something that looked like a very popular thing and just went with it and had the quality to back it up even. During the 80s, Remco popped out a couple of knockoff waves that might have dubbed them with the name knockoff, yet some of their original lines were pretty good. And there's one thing you can't do wrong: skeletons. So I'm actually going to be on the lookout for these 2 epic lines, or at least the skeletons in them. Now, that means for Nightmare Warriors, pretty much the whole line is a toy grail for me. I want to get every single one of these glow-in-the-dark warriors that look just perfectly epic. And then on the other side, what Remco was doing was they created Pirates of the Galaxies, which is a really cool concept. You had 5.5 characters, but you also had some epic skeletons in here. For this line, I'm mostly going to be on the lookout for ribs and crossbones, and I'm hoping to find some of them with some of the accessories. They had, you know, a gun or a shield, but they also came with treasure. They actually came with pirate treasure from the galaxies, which is so cool they came with a collector coin. Each one had their own coin, so you could collect them all. And there you pretty much have it. These are my toy grails, which I'm gonna be probably occupied with the next couple years trying to acquire. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe for more 80s and 90s toy videos and my upcoming toy room tour. And please don't forget to leave in the comments down below what your top 3 toy grails is and why you want them so bad. If you like the video, then you can always leave a thumbs up or a like on the video. That always helps. And if you'd like to do more, you can always support us on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the new year. See you soon.